Vacation plans, long commute, weekend at the cabin. Wherever you end up this summer, the Connector Idaho Daily News helps keep you connected to Idaho, even while you're away. Get the top local stories every weekday morning in just a few minutes. That's the Connector Idaho Daily News. Listen on your podcast app.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudet. You're listening to Idaho Matters. It's Friday, which means it's time for our Reporter Roundtable. This is when we get you up to date on the news that made headlines this last week. And today our panel includes George Prentice with Boise State Public Radio, Hadia Tariq with the Idaho Press, and Daniel Ramirez with EastIdahoNews.com. Happy Friday, everybody. Thanks so much for making time for us today. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Gemma.
Morning.
And George, let's
Thanks
begin with you today. So good to have all of you here. And George, I want to get right to a developing story because just hours ago, a federal judge ruled that part of Idaho's abortion ban is unconstitutional. So what do we know about this?
So this was the trial that began in June at the federal courthouse when a caregiver, a maternal fetal medicine specialist at St. Luke's in Boise, filed a lawsuit challenging what has been the Defense of Life Act, commonly known as the 6-week ban. So the ruling, and it's an 82-page document, has now come down from federal judge B. Lynn Windmill. It's quite a read. I'll read just a bit from it because it is rather compelling. The 14th Amendment's due process and equal protection clauses establishes a fundamental right to abortion when a pregnancy threatens a woman's health. Quote, Idaho may not criminalize abortions deemed medically necessary to save the pregnant woman's life or prevent serious and long-term impairments to her health unless the restriction is narrowly tailored to a compelling state interest. And here is the linchpin. Quote, a blanket ban on health-preserving abortions is not narrowly tailored. And Judge Windmill added that the exception also must include mental health conditions that might cause a woman to take her own life if she remained pregnant. And again, an 82-page ruling that came down late Thursday from the federal courthouse. And yes, we are beginning to get reaction from both sides as well, Gemma.
All right, George, appreciate that update. And as you said, I know our Julie Luqueta is on this and we'll be following it throughout the day. So just appreciate that update. So George, in other news, as all of us know, hundreds of thousands of kids, including my own, are heading back to school this week and next. And while there is a lot of change every single year, George, it seems like the biggest change this year is happening in the classrooms. This is a moment of silence. So remind us where this came from.
So we're going to take you back to March of this year and the Idaho legislature, and one of the sponsors of the bill, House Representative Bruce Skog of Nampa. And let's take a listen to when he proposed this measure.
We're saying, yes, to teachers, you will give these students 60 seconds time alone in their minds. And again, I use the bathroom bill scenario where there's all different kinds of policies and we're just making it into a single policy. 60 seconds isn't too demanding.
60 seconds isn't too demanding, he said. But most of the pushback at the time came from educators, former educators and current educators. And let's take a listen to that.
Requiring a daily moment of silence in public schools raises serious First Amendment issues.
Is it the job of the legislature to dictate how time must be spent in every public school in Idaho?
Idaho's children don't need a law mandating a minute of silence. They need food, medical care, and engaged instruction.
But it passed both the House and the Senate. It wasn't completely along party lines, but indeed it passed, and Governor Little signed it into law.
So, George, how is this truly playing out in the classrooms this week?
Yeah, some 700 plus public schools are returning to class every day. A 60-second moment of silence must occur. I think it's important that maybe I read part of this. The legislation requires public school classrooms provide a moment of silence for students for a minimum of 60 seconds at or near the beginning of each school day to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in any other silent activity. So we've heard from a number of principals. We heard from a couple of them earlier this week on this broadcast. But we're hearing, different scenarios. Some are saying, you bet, we'll fold it into our morning activities. But others, kind of a different story there, Gemma.
So talk to us a little bit about that, George, because some schools just say they can't fit it in the morning. Is that correct? So they're not doing it the same way.
That's right. I spoke to the principal over at Timberline High School in Southeast Boise, who said pretty much the only time they could fit it into their schedule was fourth period. That's late morning. But he said, hey, look, that's pretty much the time that we have. In spite of the fact that the legislation says at or near the beginning of each school day. So it'll be interesting to see if we hear any fallout from that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Appreciate that, George. Hadia, first, welcome to the Reporter Roundtable. It's your first time being here. We love having you. So welcome.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So you recently reported on the city of Boise having more than 100 businesses that are waiting for a liquor license. And some of the wait can actually apparently stretch for decades. So why is it so hard to get a liquor license in Boise right now?
Mhm. Yeah, so this isn't an issue that is new to Boise. In Idaho, like many states, cities are granted licenses based on their population. Here, each city is allocated 2 licenses plus additional licenses for every 1,500 people that they have. So, in Boise, liquor licenses have been notoriously difficult to get. I mean, to put it simply, there's many more businesses interested in getting a license than there are licenses to go around. As the valley has been growing, competition has been stiffening, and liquor licenses are kind of key to entering Boise's nightlife. Um, Another factor is Boise's population growth. The Treasure Valley has had a population boom. That's no secret to anyone. But looking at the numbers from 2020 to 2025, the population within Boise itself has only grown approximately 3,000 people. That's only 2 more licenses, while the rest of the valley is continuing to grow.
So let's go back to what you were saying in regards to the difficulty of liquor licenses in Boise and folks getting them. And I think what you were talking about is our population growth, but we're just not getting as many licenses. So we've got this big wait list.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of there's numerous factors here, but I think one of them is the fact that people in Meridian, people in Nampa, people as far as Canyon County are coming to Boise for the nightlife, but they don't necessarily live here, so that doesn't equate to the same number of liquor licenses as there is interest.
Well, you looked at one particular or business, Voodoo Cellar, and in your reporting, you said they waited nearly 5 years, but then they paid upwards of $300,000 for a license. So is that what businesses are having to do if they really don't want to wait decades?
Most definitely. I mean, being on the wait list isn't a guarantee to getting a license. In Voodoo Cellar's 5 years of being on the wait list, they only moved up 3 or 5 spots on the list. By the time they actually ended up getting their license this year, they still hadn't made it to the top 100 in the list. There's no lottery system. This is purely get in line and wait for your turn. So unless the city begins to accrue more licenses, it's pretty stagnant.
So my understanding is that the state did change the law in 2024. Can you talk to us about that? And has that actually made liquor license more affordable or easier for businesses to get?
hmm Yeah, so yeah, you said in 2024, the Idaho Ledge limited the resale of existing licenses. So instead of a license being passed around, in theory, a holder could sell it one time, but then if that next seller doesn't need it anymore, it ends up going back to the city, in theory. It also limited like the acquisition of licenses by individuals that don't reside in Idaho, and there's some other small tweaks and changes. I heard from business owners that maybe it wasn't as much as they would like to see. Whether it's enough depends on who you ask, and I think it may be too soon to tell.
Okay, appreciate that update. George, the city of Boise is cracking down on e-motos. I have to tell you, I've never heard that term. So can you tell us what e-motos are?
Yeah, this is probably the hottest topic on social media, other than the weather, and it's Boise's crackdown on e-motos, and basically they are electric motorcycles. They are not e-bikes, and that was the intention of the city imposing an emergency ordinance earlier this summer. E-motos travel much, much faster than e-bikes. If you go online and type in e-moto, and by the way, you will find all kinds of messaging that is geared toward younger riders, but you will see that e-motos can go 40, 45, 50
Oh,
miles per hour or more. And indeed, that's why the emergency ordinance, the people at City Hall said they were hearing from way too many people in the city.
okay. So George, you said emergency ordinance. Remind us about this emergency ordinance. Ordinance,
Basic,
rather.
yeah, it's basically the same rules as motorcycles. So think of insurance. You've got to have insurance to drive one of these. Now you do. Making certain that you have a driver's license, making sure that you have a motorcycle endorsement. And indeed, the whole point was to really try to clear up any confusion. Is this an e-bike? No, this is not an e-bike. It's an e-moto. So Boise Police, as a matter of fact, made a presentation to Boise Council this week, and some of their findings were really interesting, Gemma.
Okay, so George, talk to us about that. I mean, what are the Boise Police Department poised to do?
Well, I think it's really interesting that they shared some statistics. Boise Police recorded 101 incidents in July that were related to e-motos or e-bikes. They didn't discern the two, but among these incidents were 6 collisions, 2 of which were determined to be at the fault of the riders. By the way, I think this is really interesting. Boise Police indeed has received complaints of a number of people who are no fans of e-motos, but Boise Police is also receiving complaints of actual lawful riders of e-motos being harassed, saying that some members of the public have been yelling at them, following them, and recording them. So indeed, this is dividing the city. So some more statistics here. Boise Police clocked a number of these vehicles. Period of speed monitoring on the Greenbelt in late July and early August. And again, this was on the Greenbelt. The average speed was measured at nearly 14 miles an hour, but 10 to 15% of the riders reached speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. The highest recorded speed was 34 miles an hour on the Greenbelt.
On the green belt, George.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
so Boise
Wow.
Police have been handing out citations, and many of them for exactly what I just shared with you earlier. That is lack of insurance, making a lack of a driver's license, a lack of a motorcycle endorsement. They've been handing out a number of citations.
So George, is there an educational piece of this? And if so, can you tell us about it? And is it working?
I think that remains to be seen to answer your second question, but the council has put together a special task force with representation from Boise Police, but also representation from parents and youth as well. So some folks may have seen signs reading, "Don't be a speed demon." And they're posting a number of these on the Greenbelt. There's an image on it picturing a cyclist moving so fast that their image is blurred. The city insists that this is really edgy. I don't know how many kids would consider "Don't be a speed demon" edgy, but they think it's going to work. And will it have an impact? Gosh, that really remains to be seen. But right now,
Uh,
unless you don't want to hear about it. If you go on social media, you will hear a lot of people, putting their two cents in on this debate.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll continue to follow it, of course. Thank you, George, for that. Hadia, two recent violent attacks on Boise's Greenbelt are really fueling, it seems, a bigger debate over homelessness, but as well as public safety and whether the city of Boise is actually doing enough to enforce Idaho's camping ban. So, how much of this is this debate really about the city's response to homelessness? And in your reporting, how much did you find it is maybe about, these two specific crimes, or are they combined, if that makes sense?
Mhm. Yeah. I think, well, I mean, again, as I was saying earlier, it depends on who you ask. But when you look at the two incidents, only one of the two incidents was actually perpetuated by a local unhoused individual. That was the case of Ross Wardlaw, who allegedly stabbed 25-year-old Jordan Harper to death. Part of what really shook people from this attack was the randomness of it. It appeared that the two had not known each other prior to the incident. Um, Still, the conversation has kind of shifted to focus on addressing the homelessness issue in Boise. And there's been a lot of implications that Boise has been too soft in its approach to the growing homeless population.
So, state lawmakers are accusing the city of Boise of not enforcing the camping ban. So, I'm curious, with your reporting, were you able to talk to the city and did they say anything about this? And then, what do the numbers actually show?
Mhm. Yes, I spoke with Mayor Lauren McLean pretty soon after a press release was made, kind of accusing the city of not enforcing the camping ban. So she expressed defense to the accusation and was saying whether or not she agrees with the camping ban. The Boise Police Department has been working diligently to enforce it from her perspective. It's changed. They've changed their previous approach to the unhoused, where maybe they would talk to them case by case basis, considering whether there are shelters open, and then deciding whether to issue a citation, depending on the number of beds in the shelter. But police records do indicate that BPD has been issuing citations and enforcing the camping ban. So from 2025 to 2026, BPD has issued 113 citations so in the span of a year. And also, since BPD Chief Chris Dennison entered his role in 2024, the Boise Police Department has cleared a total of 193 camps and collected
Hmm.
over 73,000 pounds of trash. So, whether you agree with the police's approach, they do seem to be addressing the issue.
So, speaking of Chief Dennison, Hadia, what does he say that officers are doing right now then to address both public safety concerns as well as the city's unhoused population?
Yeah, so the immediate response has been to increase bike patrols on the green belt. So when you see officers riding around on their bicycles, they tend to stop and chat with people and check in. As for the approach to homelessness itself, Dennison said not much has changed since he began as chief. They're continuing to try to work with the unhoused population and work with them on a case by case basis as much as they are able to. The city and the police department have been utilizing their behavioral health resources, including a behavioral health team that the BPD can deploy.
Mhm.
They try to connect individuals with resources as they can, but those are the main tools that they're working with.
So appreciate that update. Daniel, let me bring you into the conversation today. Thanks for joining us from Eastern Idaho. You've got a lot going on over there, including some really heavy rain in the area, and it's really creating some new threats. And this is where the burn scar from the Big Rock fire is apparently sending mud and debris onto roads, and it's forcing multiple closures. Can you talk to us about that? I mean, how much damage have officials seen so far?
Right. And yeah, thank you for having me. So, with currently the heavy rain that we're seeing right now over in eastern Idaho, the damage is still undetermined as we're still expecting another round of showers later today in the area where the burn scar happened with the big rock fire. But so far, from what we've seen, is debris, usually from the trees that were burned up at the big rock fire, being kind of washed down onto the roads. As of today, as of 9 a.m. today, parts of High C Road has opened, but parts of the roads heading west towards Ryrie are still closed due to some of the mudslide.
So, can you talk a little bit more then about the concerns that some of these roads will remain closed for a while, and why is that such an issue if these roads remain closed for a bit of time?
Yeah, well, the High C area is very much a big recreational area for a lot of residents here in Eastern Idaho, as well as just for folks who just come down just for the hot springs, as well as for Kelly Canyon ski area, right? The Big Rock Fire, which burned over 2,000 acres in the Kelly Canyon area, and thankfully none of the properties of High C nor Kelly Canyon were affected. The main issue is that access to these campgrounds, to these RV parks are still closed, but residents are
Mhm.
still able to go in and make sure their properties are still okay.
So, how has the Big Rock Fire changed what would normally happen in this area, during a heavy rainstorm? I mean, it's not like they don't see rainstorms like this.
Right. And that's one of the things with my colleague was out there working is, these incidents aren't, uncommon. It's just due to the Big Rock Fire, it has made conditions worse just as the moisture isn't going into the ground. And due to the ash and the debris and all that stuff, it's just becoming an issue of safety for folks being able to go in through that area and making sure their vehicles are safe and that they are being safe.
So, my understanding is that more rain is expected, Daniel. So, what are officials most concerned about over what is this the next day or two that you could see this weather?
Right. Yeah. We are expecting rain showers, I think, up until Tuesday. Just Thursday's storm that came through was very much a long, almost a full day of just rain in the area, especially over in the mountain areas where we do see those conditions increase in terms of just moisture. For right now, folks are still preparing just in case conditions change in terms of how much rain is falling. It's still too early to determine how much rain will fall, but our those emergency officials are just keeping an eye on it, and any other updates, they'll let us know.
So, Daniel, the College of Eastern Idaho is opening the doors to a new $52 million future tech building. And apparently, this is going to give students more room to train for some of our state's fastest growing careers. So, what will students find inside this new building? And what makes it
Yeah.
different, from a traditional college classroom?
No, for sure. So yeah, so the new building, which has a very long name, it is known as the Batil Energy Alliance Future Tech Building in partnership with Frontier Credit Union, which for us here at East Idaho News, we will dub it as the Future Tech Building just for namesake. So
That
students will
makes
be able to
sense.
find a handful of degrees that are very much in demand for Eastern Idaho as well as for the state of Idaho. These degrees involve mechatronics, engineering, cybersecurity, surgical technology, and degrees and training that focuses on a lot of those careers.
So, a lot of folks may not realize, Daniel, at least over in the western part of the state, that the College of Eastern Idaho is actually now a community college, and it's grown really dramatically since it made that switch to a community college back in 2017. Can you talk to us about how much this new building will help, um, you know, with growth as well as degrees and a career track for many people?
Right. Yeah. So this new building will add another capacity of of 1,000 students. Um, and speaking with College of Eastern Idaho president Lori Barber, she said that from 2017, when the college became a community college, they had about 1,000 students to where last year they had about 4,000, and they were expecting that number to continually to increase. Um, and so, yeah, this new building will essentially just allow for more expansion into those programs. One of the programs that moved from the main campus was surgical tech, where they actually have now spaces to actually have labs and things like that. And it also allows that space that was vacated in the main campus also expand for their healthcare programs.
Mm. So healthcare programs for sure. How does the INL play into shaping these programs? Because they're a huge employer in East Idaho.
Yes, they are. And yeah, so the Idaho National Laboratory, their director, John Wagner, was speaking during the ribbon cutting, and he discussed how is very much common with their other employers here, like Eastern Idaho Regional Medical Center and other organizations like that. They work with the College of Eastern Idaho's teachers, the professors, to create curriculum that makes sure that these students are being trained in areas that they are seeing a need for, or saying, hey, this didn't really work out, let's fix it and let's decide to change it a little bit. So there's a lot of collaboration where, as Wagner discussed during the ribbon cutting, a lot of their team from the Idaho laboratory will actually go and teach students. So this pretty much places all of that under one building instead of being spread out all over campus.
Wow. And so the building is up and running, correct? I mean, classes are in session?
Yep. The building will be ready for students on August 17th.
All right. Well, appreciate that. So, George, some interesting news coming out of McCall. The city manager resigned. So remind us who this person is.
Yes, Forrest Atkinson is the city manager in the city of McCall. He's been city manager for a couple of years now. This is why it's such a big deal. There are only two cities in Idaho that have a city manager form of government. By the way, the other one is Twin Falls. The city manager pretty much runs the show administratively. The city manager is responsible for overseeing the 100 city employees, managing the day-to-day operations, implementing the direction of the city council, and most importantly, administering the city budget. One of the biggest changes that Forrest Atkinson oversaw was changing city hall hours and hours for all city staff to be a 4-day work week, Monday through Thursday. You may remember that story in the last year, but indeed, last evening was his final evening with the McCall City Council, where they accepted his resignation.
Do we know why he resigned, George?
This is all he would say. He said he is leaving for a compelling opportunity in the private sector, but he will still be living in the area and focusing on Idaho issues. By the way, the city manager base salary, $186,000 per year, and pretty big deal. By the way, we were expecting to hear more from him last evening. This is what happened. Technically, the city council met and they had a full agenda of business. And near the end of their meeting, they went into executive session. They were supposed to come out of that executive session and then go back on the record and continue to stream the meeting, audio and video. No one ever turned the audio back on or the video back on last evening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So his final day, just so you know, is Monday. His resignation is effective August the 17th. And Gemma, I should say that they have an interim in place, a very familiar name. McCall is reappointing Phil Cushland as their interim manager. People in Boise will remember Phil Cushland from the Capital City Development Corporation. But Phil Cushland has served as interim city manager before, in between city managers. Guess what? Just before they hired Forrest Atkinson. So he will be the interim while they now undergo another search for another city manager.
George, this seems like it was surprising, this resignation.
I think it took a lot of people by surprise, considering how much is happening in McCall. They just did finish their budget. By the way, keep in mind that the city manager is responsible for helping to set a budget and administering the budget. I don't know if there's a good time or a bad time to leave, but I don't remember anyone saying anything about this up until just a few days ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, appreciate that news, George. So, Daniel, an Idaho Falls nonprofit leader who has spent years helping families who face food insecurity, she's saying goodbye. Her name is Ariel Jackson, and she is stepping down as executive director of the Community Food Basket. She's been with the organization, I believe, for almost a decade. Um, can you talk to us about her decision to leave and really the impact that she's had on this organization?
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure of working with Ariel Jackson just as a reporter covering issues, not issues, but just fundraisers and things like that, the Community Food Basket.
Hmm.
And yeah, Ariel Jackson will be a new resident of Boise, as she has taken a job as the director of operations for the St. Alphonsus Foundation. As she discussed when she talked with my colleague Andrea Olson, this decision was made just due to her being want to be closer with family, to family that live in the Boise area. So yeah.
And my understanding too is that she has a really personal connection to the families the Community Food Basket serves. How did her own experience shape the work that she's done at the Community Basket?
Right. So yeah, so Jackson discussed that she herself, when she was about 25, that she struggled financially, supporting. She was divorced. She had 3 kids, and she didn't have a job, so money was very tight. And so she talks about how a lot of these services, housing vouchers, food stamps, a lot of these assistants she had as a single mom helped her to, um, get out of that situation. um, and she's always enjoyed working with people and things like that. And she talks about how after she got a degree in healthcare administrations, that she joined as a director of social services for the Salvation Army, and then ended up moving over to the Community Food Basket in 2018. And then from there, just who she is and her work very much compounded itself, and things like
Hmm.
that. And she really does pride herself in helping families who are struggling in difficult situations when it comes to food security.
So she took over. Did she take over as director right as the pandemic started, Daniel?
She ended up, she was first an executive assistant and then later became
Okay.
director 2 years after the fact. But that when she became director was during COVID.
And so how did she help the food basket, I mean, grow and change during her time as executive director? I mean, especially, I'm sure, probably the amount of people who needed even more food assistance during the pandemic.
Right. Her main thing was fundraising. She organized a lot of the fundraising, year round, working with different partners, such as, the Boy Scouts of America, um, the local school districts hosting the Super Bowl, as we call it here, where students bring in cans and donations, as well as hosting just fundraising nights throughout the year where residents can come buy tables, buy sponsorships. One of the more recent ones that she had was kind of a poker night where, people can, put bets and help raise money and things like that for the food bank. Just things that are, fun and interactive for people to say, hey, let's give back.
Hey, Daniel, this sounds like this must have been a really emotional decision for her to leave this position. And as you mentioned, where she's going, is she actually then leaving Idaho Falls, or is she able to do her new job in Idaho Falls?
She'll be leaving Idaho Falls. And yeah, this will be her last day is today. And here soon she'll be working in Boise as part of the St. Alphonsus Foundation.
And before I move on, so Daniel, has there been a replacement named, or I'm sure there'll be a search for a new executive director for this position?
Yes, there is currently a search ongoing for the Community Food Basket. Their board of directors are looking for a new executive director, and so they are doing an open house today, later in the evening at 5:30, where residents can come and just learn more, as well as have a celebration for Ariel Jackson as well for her years of service in the food basket.
Appreciate that, Daniel. So, George, you've been reporting on the lack of huckleberries this year. I have to say, I was at the grocery store the other day and I saw how much huckleberries cost, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
never mind on that. Well, so,
There's a reason for that.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, can you remind us why there are fewer huckleberries this year? Because I didn't realize that until I saw the price at the grocery store.
Yeah, huckleberries, particularly, Idaho's official fruit, huckleberries, were suffered a 1-2 punch this year. Really lousy snowpack during the winter, as we all remember, and then a late frost. Both of those, either of those, I should say, is not good news for huckleberries. Both of them together, really, really bad news. And there was some talk and some reporting that the huckleberry season might be delayed. But we learned, nope, this is pretty much it. We talked to the chief botanist from Fish and Game who said, yeah, this is pretty much it. And as a result, our huckleberry pies and huckleberry ice cream, et cetera, yeah, you've got to forage for them, but there's not much out there.
Okay, and so then, George, it seems that even though there's not much out there, there is now a bigger problem in regards to
Yeah.
the huckleberries.
Indeed. So you can imagine who else likes huckleberries? Bears. So Idaho Fish and Game has gone as far as to write a pretty lengthy op-ed that is published in today's McCall Star News. And they're basically saying, guess what? Because of the huckleberry shortage, the bears are not going to be happy. They're going to be looking for those berries. And you know what happens, Gemma, when they start looking and they don't find them and they just get closer and closer and closer to where we live. And so the caution is out to residents in Valley County, McCall in particular, of the possibility of bears in search of food. And huckleberries in particular, and asking us to be vigilant and to report any sightings to police and or Fish and Game so they can hopefully safely remove the bears and relocate them.
So, George, how common is that? And I asked that question with these bear sightings because you lived in McCall. So, so is this something that bears that there are sightings of bears within the city limits, or is this kind of rare and that's why, they're saying, hey, be sure to be on the lookout for this?
Sure, it's rare, but wildlife in McCall is rather commonplace. And for the last few years, there's been conversation about how many wild deer are in McCall and whether some people were actually even trying to feed the deer. And that's a no-no as well. But for bears to come into the community, yeah, that's rare. Has it happened? Yes, it has. But my gosh, especially for the city folk who come up to see or spend some time with their vacation spot, yeah, those folks are not going to see bears too many times in their life.
All right. Well, really appreciate that update, George. And thanks for explaining why huckleberries are a small fortune this year.
Yeah.
America has more than 100 million acres of land that's managed as wilderness, and most of it is concentrated in the West. Conservationists worry that a Trump administration review of land management rules could actually threaten these wild places. And as Heath Drusen reports from Central Idaho for the Mountain West News Bureau, today, August 14th, is the last day the public can comment on these potential changes.
Okay, we are at the sign here at the Pack Bridge to the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness. Crossing the creek, and we are in the Frank. This federally designated wilderness is the largest contiguous one in the lower 48 states. It's a roadless stretch of mountains, forest, and steaming natural hot springs. Elk, moose, and wolves roam here. And at this moment, so do I. The Wilderness Act of 1964 says lands like these are a place where, quote, man himself is a visitor who does not remain. They are meant to be preserved as close to their natural state as possible. Little beyond hiking trails are allowed.
So halfway there? No, not quite. 2 more miles to go. Right?
Yes. Well, we're at the river crossing, changing into our water shoes. And many more areas around the country could become wilderness like this. They're called wilderness study areas. Back in July, the Department of Interior opened a 60-day public comment period on the manuals that govern how the study areas are managed. They're managed as wilderness, but need a vote from Congress to get the same protections as the Frank Church. Former Bureau of Land Management Director Tracy Stone Manning, who served in the Biden administration, notes that news of the review of study areas was tucked into a press release that led with a review of rock climbing rules on public lands.
This comment period feels like a Trojan horse that rides this question that says, tell us what you think. And the administration is going to find excuses to then open up these wildlands to spoil them forever.
She's now the national president of the Wilderness Society, a conservation group. She is particularly worried about the possibility of motorized vehicles, like ATVs, being allowed in.
People go to seek solace in these places. And by opening up the potential for motorized recreation in these places, in addition to all the other places that have motorized recreation, we are taking away all of the last truly wild, quiet places.
In early August, Democratic senators sent a letter to Interior Secretary Doug Burgum opposing the review. Department officials did not respond to requests for comments for this story. But in a press release on opening the manuals to public comment, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum says, quote, "Under President Trump's leadership, Interior is focused on expanding outdoor recreation opportunities, removing unnecessary barriers to access and use, and managing public lands in a way that benefits the American people." The review of wilderness study areas is the latest of several moves by the Trump administration to alarm conservationists. It goes on the list with the administration's layoffs of National Park Service and U.S. Forest Service employees, and efforts to overturn the so-called roadless rules that prevent development in some of America's most pristine places. Many wilderness areas and wilderness study areas contain sites of historical and sacred significance to Native American tribes. Tribes also often have hunting and fishing rights guaranteed by treaties with the federal government. Lytle Denny is the Natural Resources Deputy Director for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes in this region. He says the Trump administration has done a poor job of including tribes in land management decisions.
I would say in general, we're frustrated with this administration and their consistent attack on our federal public lands.
Denny said the tribe will be watching closely for what the government does after the comment period closes. For the Mountain West News Bureau, I'm Heath Drusen.
And as I said in the beginning of this segment, today is the final day for the public to comment on those rules that govern governing wilderness study areas. If you want to learn more, go to our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. And I want to thank all of our Friday Reporter Roundtable for joining us today. Our panelists have been our very own George Prentice with Boise State Public Radio, Hadi Tarek with the Idaho Press, and Daniel Ramirez with EastIdahoNews.com joined us as well. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Make sure you check out our podcast feed because you can find more episodes of topics that might be interesting to you. And for more local news and headlines, make sure you subscribe to the Connector podcast. And text this podcast to a friend. It's how podcasts grow.
The fatal shooting of a teenager at a protest in Seattle has gone unsolved for 6 years.
This is open in your face. How are there no answers?
Our investigation has uncovered new evidence and witnesses who say they've never talked to police.
Did police ever call you? Not once.
Listen to We Keep Us Safe, a new true crime series on the Embedded podcast from NPR.